Hi, everyone. Welcome back. Thank you for joining us for this presentation. It's entitled Collaborating Together While Working Apart, Strategies for Conducting Evaluations During the Pandemic. And it's presented today by Carolyn Reppert, Tracy Arnwine, and Jonathan Nixarian. Carolyn Reppert is a Principal Emergency Preparedness Specialist at the Savannah River Nuclear Solutions at the U.S. Department of Energy's Savannah River site. In this capacity, she oversees the conduct of emergency management self-assessments at the site and the facility level. Carolyn works in the Emergency Readiness Assurance Group, so she's responsible for updating and maintaining emergency plans, procedures, and manuals, and she also helps ensure resources are available, exercises, and evaluated in accordance with DOE orders. Caroline is also the chair for the Emergency Management Readiness Assurance Subcommittee, or ERASC, a great subcommittee, and we thank you, Carolyn, for that service so much. Tracy Arnwine has been with the Savannah River Nuclear Solutions at the Savannah River site since February of 2019. She is part of the Emergency Response Training and Evaluation Group as the lead scenario writer. Tracy was largely responsible for the integration of the CRAD, the Criteria and Review and Approach document, into the Savannah River site Exercise Builder baseline, and she's now responsible for ensuring that the baseline is updated and maintained for all the facilities that make up the SRS. Tracy came to SRS from the Waste Isolation Pilot Plant here in Carlsbad, New Mexico, where she was a procedure writer for almost 3 years. Tracy and her husband have 4 children and 1 grandson. They love to travel and enjoy spending time with their family. Yippee, me too, Tracy. Jonathan Nixarian has been working with the DOE Complex for 6 years in construction, security, and emergency preparation. He's known as Nick, and he has an MS in Emergency Management, a PhD in Public Policy Administration and Homeland Security. We're so grateful for the 3 of you being here today. And now, Caroline, Tracy, and Jonathan, Nick, the virtual stage is yours.
Hello, everybody. I'm Caroline Reppert from the Savannah River site, and I work in Emergency Management Readiness Assurance. And today I'm excited to share with you some tools that we found really helpful during the pandemic. And also, I'm going to explain to you how we've revamped our self-assessment program. And then later on in the presentation, my coworkers Tracy and Nick are going to be sharing how they've incorporated the CRAD, the Criteria Review and Approach document, into Exercise Builder. And it all connects together because we build our self-assessment plan, and then, of course, we're going to evaluate what our plan is actually saying we're going to do. So to give you a little bit of background about the Savannah River site, for those of you who may not be familiar, we're a 310 square mile site, and it's a lot of dense pine tree forests, actually, and their facilities spread out all over the place. The areas across the site have a letter in the prefix. So if you see in the presentation F area or H area, or hear us talk about that as examples, that's what that means. And A area, for example, is where a lot of EM staff are located. That's where their offices are. Currently, we have 6 major contractors. And as you can see, we celebrated our 70th anniversary last year in 2020. And we currently have over 11,000 employees. So that's SRS at a glance, just to give you an idea of what our site does. And we're located in South Carolina, but our site borders Georgia, so we have a lot of employees from there as well. And so to give you some background on our process, when the CRAD became available, we did a side-by-side comparison because we were already 2 years into our 5-year plan. So we had FY18 and then FY19, and so we still had 20, 21, and 22 to plan out how we were going to conduct our self-assessment program and make sure that we are fully aligned with DOE Order 151.1 Delta. So why did we move to the CRAD? Well, my answer for that is it's a very straightforward way of approaching assessments. As you're probably familiar, it lists the approaches you should use, document records reviews, interviews, observations very clearly to make sure that you are assessing those questions and problems from the right angle. And what I did was I looked at what we had already assessed in the guide. So you'll see here, for example, P2.2 states this right here, and I could find a match in the CRAD, so we could already take credit for these items here in Section A, Program Management and Administration. And so areas where it was a partial match were color-coded yellow, and we would go ahead and plan on reassessing it just because it was just a partial match. And then if it was in red, that means that we had not assessed that part of the CRAD, and we would need to include it in our 5-year plan. So that was our little coding system that we used to identify that green, yes, we already assessed. Yellow, it's a partial, but we're going to probably need to reassess it. And then red means that we need to add it to our schedule. And so this is what we came up with, is at a glance, we have our self-assessment schedule by year, and this just happens to be 2021, the year that we're currently in, and we're in quarter 4 right now, of course, and it has it divided out by color-coded by the CRAD section. So, for example, readiness assurance is purple, and I'm a very visual person, so it kind of helps me see what we're assessing and when we're assessing it. And then yellow is color-coded for observation, so you can plan ahead when you're thinking about what's coming up in the quarter, what kind of virtual tabletops are we having, because in the pandemic, we've had to adapt to virtual tabletops for a lot of things. We have had a few real events that we've been able to use after action reports to include those in our observations. So that's been very key to the process. And so we've had to really rely on working with what we have available. And occasionally there've only been a few cases where we've had to postpone a few LOIs to the next year when we'll have a full-scale exercise at the site level. So it's been working really well. Actually, our self-assessment program has not slowed down one bit at all during the pandemic, because we can rely a lot on the document records reviews, interviews, and observations when we look at after action reports that are current, as well as the virtual tabletops when those got started back up again. And then just to give you an idea of the number of assessments we have for our site currently, we have 1 site level assessment for our EM program, and then 7 facility level assessments that our EPCs are the main owners on those, but I'm the one that sort of sets that up at the beginning of the quarter and then also closes them at the end. So, of course, at the site level, you're going to have more lines of inquiry, because some of the particular sections of the CRAD, like emergency public information, is a site level, usually a site level something you could measure, but then at the facility level, it's not applicable to them. That's just an example of how we have to make sure. When you look at this chart here, you'll see there's fewer facility level lines of inquiry for this particular quarter, because it's site level applicable and not facility level. And so what we'll do going into the next quarter, about a week or 2 prior to that getting started, I'll send out the lines of inquiry that are all the site level ones, line by line, and the facility EPCs will do a review and determine which ones are applicable to their facilities. And then the EPC manager will also weigh in on that as well, and we'll go line by line during an in-brief meeting that we hold virtually on Teams, and we're able to share our screens, look at each of those lines of inquiry together, make notes on how they are specific to the facility, and that is how I generate their self-assessments each quarter. And this is just a illustration, our site level. This is our badge office entrance, and this is a stylized image of one of our facilities. It looks kind of like it's in an Avengers movie or something of our F area. So that just gives you an idea of the difference between site level and facility level, and how we're able to manage that, and how we've been able to use the CRAD. And just to further explain this at a glance, you can see that I've arranged it by the responsible group. So we have our readiness assurance group, and then our EM programs, our site drills and exercise program, and EPCs. And you can see each of them are divided out. And I tried to do it as equally as possible, so not just one group gets all of the lines of inquiry, but they're arranged in a certain way that they're assessing their own program, since it is a self-assessment. And that seems to be working pretty well. And again, the yellow color coding system means that that's an observation, and that we would need to plan ahead to observe that line of inquiry. And our self-assessments live here in our SRS uses something called STAR, which is Site Tracking, Analysis, and Reporting. And you probably have something similar at your site where all the self-assessments, management field observations, commitment tracking system, where all of that lives. And so just to give you an idea, I just wanted to include that in my explanation as well. And this is how the self-assessments are actually built and what they look like in our system. And you can see that the CRAD number is here, our individual Savannah River site specific APOC number, which stands for Assessment for Performance Objective Criteria. That number is unique to Functional Area 13, which is emergency management, and it'll help us track and trend issues if we're having opportunities for improvement or findings in certain areas. We can keep track of that a lot better now that we have an APOC. And we can add more enabling LOIs to future quarters to make sure that any kind of issues we've been having over the previous year, that they've been corrected. And so you'll also see that we've included the approach to make that easy for the assessors to know what they're supposed to be doing to answer the question. And you can also see the reference to the DOE order. That's important because sometimes you need context to know exactly what the question's asking. It is very helpful to go back to the order just to see what is that question really getting at. And then I wanted to just demonstrate a screenshot of what our assessments really look like in our system and how we build them. And a useful tool that I use constantly to develop self-assessments is something that one of my coworkers, Thomas Roller, and that's the Roller, the rCRAD tool, that's where that comes from. And it's actually an Excel document of the CRAD, and it's just for easy copying and pasting. So to build these assessments, all I have to do is copy this part and paste it into STAR, and then copy this part and paste it into STAR, and it's easy rather than just using a PDF. Sometimes it's a little cumbersome to copy and paste from PDF. So I've found that extremely helpful. You can sort it by enabling or compliance LOI. You can, hide certain things you might not need to see when you're trying to copy and paste a bunch of things. So it's extremely useful, and that's available on the ERASC SharePoint site under Documents if you're interested in checking it out for your site potentially. And right before the pandemic, we started using these just fillable PDFs for our in briefs and out briefs as well. And this is just a screenshot of what we complete at the beginning of every quarter to make sure that the EM manager concurs with the lines of inquiry, and then we would sign it and attach it to the self-assessment, and that's a requirement that our site has to conduct self-assessments. And we've been able to complete all of our in briefs and out briefs completely virtually since we were sent home in March of 2020, and so that's made it pretty seamless and streamlined, and we kind of all know what to expect. And then just like the in brief is a fillable PDF form that requires a digital signature, we have the same for the out brief form, and this is an example of what that looks like. And then you sign at the bottom, and you attach it to the assessment, and then you close it, and everything's right where it needs to be. And something else that is an important component of our self-assessment program is training and making sure that personnel know the basis of why we do self-assessments. Why do we do them? What are some of the best practices? And so I've held the most recent virtual training was back in May, on May the 4th, so it had to be Star Wars themed. But this is just a slide that I took from the presentation just to demonstrate that we were going over lessons learned, and also gave time for people to ask questions about the process. And so looking ahead into FY23 through 27, we've already mocked up a draft 5-year plan for FY23 through 27, and that this template that I used and created is also available on the ERAS SharePoint site. And as you can see, it color codes by CRAD element, has all 15 that we're supposed to hit on in 1 year, and divided up by quarter as evenly as I could possibly do it. And that's just a snapshot of what it looks like, and that can be available for your use as well. And so this concludes my portion of presentation about how we've taken the complex issue of having a 5-year assessment plan based on the CRAD and conducting business as usual during the pandemic. And now I'm going to turn it over to my coworker, Tracy Arnwine, who's going to discuss the process of incorporating the CRAD into Exercise Builder.
My name is Tracy Arnwine, and I work at Savannah Riverside in the Emergency Response Training and Evaluation Group, ERTEG. And in our group, we house Exercise Builder that controls a lot of the way that we do our drills and exercises. So I'm going to kind of walk you through that, because where Caroline gets a lot of information for her assessments comes directly from drills and exercises and the evaluations, the AARs and the LLRs that we perform after those. So we in the ERTEG were really kind of tasked with developing the CRAD into Exercise Builder so that we would ensure that we were actually evaluating apples to apples and oranges to oranges, and that our evaluations and assessments across the site were more objective and not subjective. So using the CRAD allows us to be able to do that. So Caroline, you can go to the next one. So as you know, or probably are familiar with, and you've probably seen this is how the CRAD is laid out. You have your program element, then you have objectives, then you have the criterion, and then you have the LOIs. So the LOIs is where really you come in for, where you get your information for the assessments and what you are assessing and looking at when you're doing your after action reports and your lessons learned reports. Next one. So with over 11,000 employees, like Caroline said, and several different facilities that we are responsible for, this is what our drill and exercise calendar looks like for the year. We normally are doing at least 100 drills and exercises for all of our facilities. We have 7 different facilities that we as the ERTEG are responsible for conducting drills, conducting annual exercises. We also assist with the site exercise, but we also have there's like 9 different facilities in addition to those 7 that are included in our Exercise Builder baseline. So those of you that are familiar with using Exercise Builder, as you can imagine, that makes it one big, huge baseline. So the next one, Caroline. Well, that's all fine and great, but how does that help me? So what does that mean to me? So at SRS, we start with our 5-year assessment plan. Then that's broken into the lines of inquiry, the LOIs that Caroline showed you earlier. Off of those, we build our drills and exercises to ensure that we hit each one of those LOIs throughout the year. And through that, then we build our assessments, right? Because at that point in time, we should have been through, by the end of the year, we should have been through every LOI that was laid out in the 5-year plan. And the 5-year plan is really our roadmap that we go off of whenever we're developing drills and exercises, because it lets us know what we need to assess, when we need to assess it, what's going to be looked at, and then we incorporate it into our packages. If you're familiar with Exercise Builder, which I'm assuming a lot of us are, you know that you have the program elements. So these are the program elements actually out of the CRAD. And for this demonstration, we're just going to take Delta, Emergency Operations System, and I'm going to show you how we have incorporated that program element throughout the CRAD. Okay, the next one. So here's our performance goal. So as we know, the performance element was EOS, Emergency Operations System. Now this is our objective. What are we going to do? We're going to include the EOS as an overarching function that includes all facilities, systems, equipment, processes, blah, 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 yada, yada, yada. That goes into the performance section goal area. The next one. So then what do we have then? We've got the program element, we've got the objective, now we've got the criterion. So given an escalating emergency incident, the shift manager implements facility resources and he controls everything. That is the criterion directly out of the CRAD. That's what the CRAD says in delta.01.01. And so you can see there that we've pulled everything that we do in Exercise Builder is directly correlated to the CRAD, with one exception. And that exception would be the response steps. So where do these response steps come from? Well, they come directly out of the procedures, directly out of every site's procedures. And here at the end of these response steps, you can see that we have K area ERO. So this baseline is specifically for the K area. We have one, like I said, for 7 plus 9. What is that? 16? So 16 different facilities. I can count this afternoon. 16 different facilities we have a baseline for. And so each one of them is unique. Their response steps are unique per their procedures, right? Because not every facility is the same. I mean, granted, you have some things that are gonna remain the same, but your response steps are directly taken out of their procedures. So then from the response steps, then that leads us to the final one, which is the LOIs. So this is where they show up, is in the evaluation guide, the EEGs. So this is what they're evaluated on, right? And it's not a secret. I mean, we have the CRAD. The CRAD is an available document that's out there available to anybody who wants to look at it. So you can know at any given time what you are going to be graded on and what you are expected to accomplish. So this just turns the response steps into did they questions. So before we saw in the response step that the SOM was supposed to show up and take control. Well, now we're going to say, did they do that? And we're going to tie it back. If you notice there, we've got delta 01.01.01, which is, again, an LOI directly out of the CRAD. So then when Caroline is doing her and other facilities are doing their self-assessments, they can come back to this and go, okay, here we have delta 01.01.01. Was that met or was it not? How did that work? And they can address the assessments. Likewise, like I said, comparing apples to apples and oranges to oranges, and everybody is on the same page. And I think one of the best things about the LOIs and the CRAD is that, again, it's not like this blanket test that's a surprise to everybody. People have access to this. And facility managers are now, we're working with facility managers to say, hey, go in here, look at this, because this is what we're going to be grading you on. And so if you direct your people here, I mean, it's like an open book test, but it's really, I mean, they still have to perform, but at least you're not blindsided on saying, oh, I didn't know you were going to be doing that. You know, it's all a roadmap there. So that is how we have gotten Exercise Builder and the CRAD to talk and to come together. And that's how we use it here at Savannah River Site. So now I'm going to pass it over to my coworker, Nick, who is going to explain how everything comes together.
Thank you, Caroline. Thank you, Tracy. And so as they've covered all that information, it's a lot taken at once, and it's all great information. But at the end of the day, how do we get it to the assessors? How does that all come and tie together? So again, I hope all of you are familiar with Exercise Builder. These are screenshots directly out of Exercise Builder. And I'm going to use F area complex ERO as the example. So here we are. We've selected our participants. This is F area. Next slide. We then select the desired objectives under scope, section 2.2. And then we move to 4.2. Thank you. And for the purpose of this demonstration, we're focused on F area ERO point 2, which focused specifically on the steps and actions of the incident scene coordinator. Next slide. And then we can go to the MESL and we can build the MESL. So again, next slide. And these are the anticipated response steps that allow us to ensure that procedural compliance by operators' performance based on their specific facility procedures. More importantly, it forms the basis of answering the CRAD-based lines of inquiry. Next slide. Following drill or exercise play, we can go to step 8.2, select the desired participant again, which is again F area ERO. Next slide. And then for that particular objective, these are the 3 evaluation guide items that are tied to lines of inquiry. Next slide. We did take a little bit of liberty. In the top, you can see how the CRAD D01.02.01 reads. We broke it down because different field play elements, for instance, control room versus the incident scene versus the incident commander, all 3 of those areas will be evaluated versus this CRAD element. And so we took the liberty of adding, did the incident scene coordinator establish, or did the fire department, or did the shift operations manager, which allows that breakdown to ensure that when at the end, the lead controller goes back to roll this up into a single AAR or LLR, they're looking at individual locations. Next slide. And so then we close the loop. We've built the drill or exercise, we've ran the drill or exercise, we've reviewed all the evaluation guides back from evaluators and controllers, and now we go to build out our AAR. So again, we select F area ERO, and we come to the first question. And next slide. So through the use of the evaluation guides, we provide controllers and evaluators with the opportunity to answer the lines of inquiry and provide detailed comments to support their answers. Those responses provide the basis for filling out the AAR. Following the after action report, we perform a self-assessment on the exercise and drill cycle. Through reviewing drill and exercise evaluation guides, we can easily cross-reference the lines of inquiry from the CRAD to our evaluation criteria specific to individual response organizations. This enables ERTEG and the exercise program to easily determine that all lines of inquiry targeted in our 5-year plan have been validated and, more importantly, tracked. And it breaks down 5 or 6 LOIs and some objectives into a simple, was it met, not met, or not observed, based on the answers to those LOIs and the evaluation guides. Do we have any questions? And thank you all for your time.
Thank you, Caroline, Tracy, and Nick. I think you're a great example of, like your title of your presentation is Collaborating Together. You certainly do a great job doing that, the 3 of you. I'd like to start our question and answer session this afternoon with a comment from David Stuhan, who says, "Awesome work. I really like your tracker of the elements and the criteria and forecasts to ensure you complete them all in a 5-year period." So great. Yeah, great comment there. And I do have a question that came in earlier, and it is, how long did it take to actually incorporate the CRAD into your existing exercise builder baseline? Any one of you to take that?
So this is Tracy. I'll take that. Carol, it took us quite a while. We had to try to figure out exactly what the best way was. Were we going to recreate the wheel, or are we just going to incorporate it into what we had already? So once we kind of came up with a plan to move forward, it probably took us a good 6 or 7, 8 months. But now keep in mind, we have 7 different facilities and several other facilities as well that we are responsible for and that we got that we had to set up. So for a single facility, it wouldn't take near that long, but for us, it did.
Thank you. I don't know if this question goes to you as well, or if one of the others want to take it. Is there a dummy baseline, what other sites can use, that already has the CRAD in it?
That would be me again. Yes, actually there is. And it will be up on the EMI-SIG SharePoint after this conference. We put something together that we believe will help the other sites that has all the CRAD information just like we do, but stripped of all the Savannah River site specific information so that you can go in and put your own information in there. So yes, so be looking for it on the SharePoint, and it will be available in the next day or so.
Excellent, super helpful. How long did it take you to incorporate the CRAD into your self-assessment plan?
I'll take that one, Carol. So we started, I believe, when looking back on it, it would have been back in the summer of 2019. And really, it took us a few months to really get a strong foundation of how we wanted our self-assessment plan to be set up when we compared the CRAD to what we had in the existing guides, how we had set up our 2 years into the plan that way. And so, but really with what we know now that we're more familiar with the CRAD, because we've been working with it so much longer and it's been out there for so much longer, I really don't think it would take longer than maybe a few weeks to really come up with a self-assessment plan, maybe tailored to your site, depending on how many facilities or how many assessments you would conduct, quarterly throughout the year. So I think it really only took us a couple of months. It really wasn't too burdensome. And I actually have some of the resources that I developed in the process of doing that available on the ERAS SharePoint site for anybody to check out if they're interested. And it's really just templates I've used to help organize how we separate out the lines of inquiry that I described that in the presentation earlier. So, and if you ever have any questions about what any of that means, you can always feel free to reach out to me just by phone or email.
That's perfect. Thank you so much. I'm pretty sure you have already addressed this, but Tom Diaz asked, are you open to sharing your work with other sites? I believe that answer was yes, but anyone want to confirm that?
So I get a chance to talk. Yeah, Tracy will be uploading the bare bones baseline with the CRAD incorporated of emergency or of exercise builder. And then as Caroline mentioned, she has hers loaded up on ERASC as well.
Wonderful. And Tom Diaz says that you're all rock stars. So.
It was definitely a team effort, but we got it done.
So great. I'm watching to see if any more questions come in before we close our session. I don't see any yet. So I just want to remind you that this fine presentation, Collaborating Together While Working Apart, Strategies for Conducting Evaluations During the Pandemic, has been recorded and it's available for playback for you to see it again or share it if someone had to miss it. Please remember to complete the survey that confirms your attendance. And we're looking forward to seeing you at sessions upcoming this afternoon at 2:30 Mountain Time. We have PAC Teal moving into the future, or a workshop, RAD Responders New Capabilities, Simulations, IM, AAC Portal, and Multi-Layer Assessment. And we have our social hour tonight at 4 o'clock, and the kids get to play. So come bring your best Play-Doh sculpture. Okay, everybody. Thanks so much. We'll see you again soon.